Stand up.
From a defabricated solar-powered garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA, this is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, the top 10 reasons you should probably not feed that stray dog. And now, the podcast host who can't help feeding animals because his personal garden is constantly burglarized, Pete Dominic!
Yes, indeed. That is accurate. This year is going to be different, I hope. Join the Stand Up Garden Club on Facebook. It's a private group. If you are into gardening, I've started posting there again. And lots of listeners and members of the community are in there. If you are into gardening, and even if you're not, but you want to be the Stand Up Garden Club on Facebook, if you're on Facebook, go join our group. There's over 1,000 people in there, and we'd love to have you in there and share your ideas and whatever you're growing and so on. Pete Coe's introduction made me think of that and think of you. Just another way to connect. How are you today? Happy Tuesday if you're listening on Tuesday, January 31st. I've got an excellent guest joining me today, one of your favorites, comedian and lawyer J.L. Cauvin. We had a wide-ranging conversation, and I think you're really going to like it. And if you don't mind me being honest here at the top, I am low energy Jeb Bush tonight. I just don't have what it takes to do a big, robust intro tonight. I've been feeling just a little bit low today, even though it was beautiful weather, got a good walk, and I don't know, just dragging. I can't really identify it. I didn't do my meditation, writing, or reading this morning, so I think that might contribute to it. I'll get back at it tomorrow. Because of that, I just don't have the energy and the enthusiasm. I think I need to do a really quality opening here, including some audio clips and news as I usually do. So I was actually thinking about just not even posting today. But I have this great conversation with JL, and I didn't think you'd mind if I just skipped the opening here at the top and got right to the conversation, because that's where I'm at. I like to be honest with you. And by the way, moving forward, I feel like one of the things I want to communicate with regular listeners is I'll be here every day, pretty much, unless otherwise informed for the rest of time. No, I mean, I'm just thinking about how I want to grow old with you, how I want to continue to have these conversations every day and connect with folks who listen to this show every day and build this community, because life is weird and everything that's happening in the world with technology is weird. And sometimes you worry about kind of what's real and whether or not the way that you're thinking and what you're thinking and how you're thinking is appropriate or moral or just or accurate or even real sometimes. And I just want to be here to keep that going. I want to be that person, hopefully in your life, that is here posting this podcast every day with smart people, maybe even you. And that was kind of a clunky way of delivering that message. I'll find a more accurate and thoughtful, articulate way to communicate exactly what I just meant. So hopefully that made sense. Like I told you, just don't have it today. But I do have a great conversation with JL for you that I had earlier, and I'm really happy to share that with you. He's always thoughtful, and I think just a great analyst of politics and life and race and culture. And there's a handful of people I like to talk to about anything. Mara Quint, who I didn't get to talk to this week, but obviously Christian Finnegan, Nayyera Haq, Wajad Ali, and many more that you could just talk to about anything, kind of a generalist. I think JL definitely falls into that category, and so I'm happy to have him as my guest on today's show. Do want to mention he's got a whole bunch of stand-up dates coming up, including this weekend in Newark, New Jersey, and then on February 7th, he'll be at City Winery in Chicago. Then in March, he'll be in Montclair, and then back in Boston in early March, in D.C., and all kinds of other dates. He's going to Philadelphia. So he's getting out there and doing stand-up and taping a new special at the end of March, beginning of April. And check him out, jlcauvin.com. Check out both of his podcasts as well. Righteous Prick and Making Podcasts Great Again. You can support him on Patreon. I think several of you already do. That's patreon.com/JLCauvin. And if you're not already supporting me with a paid subscription, hey, sign up now, right now. Go to standupwithpete.com or patreon.com/Pete Dominic so I can keep doing this each day. Before we get to the conversation, before we get to my interview with JL, I do want to play one of his latest hilarious sketches, him as Trump reacting to the fact that there are going to be 2 black quarterbacks in the Super Bowl for Kansas City and Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes are the quarterbacks, and I think President Trump has something to say about that. And I think it's pretty funny.
So this weekend I had beautiful rallies in New Hampshire and South Carolina. Nobody does two rallies in one day. Nobody does it, but they didn't cover it. No, they didn't cover it. They were too busy talking about now we have a Super Bowl with two African-American quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts, okay? The rental car. Nobody talks about that. Remember the last black we had do Hurts rental cars? O.J. Simpson. How'd that turn out? Not too nice. And then we have Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, okay? And now everybody's very excited. Oh, we have two quarterbacks, and it's a historic moment, great moment for the Super Bowl. Wonderful. And what about the white quarterbacks? Nobody cares about them. Did you see what happened to Brock Purdy? No, he couldn't throw the ball. What about white arms matter? No, because they don't even like bearing arms because it's called Second Amendment. So nobody cares about Brock Purdy or the great Nick Bosa. Big fan of mine, but big strong guy. Almost as big and strong as me. And then you have Mahomes. And he beat Joe Burrow, a great guy from a Trump state of Ohio. And nobody cares about him. Nobody cares. So it's going to be Hurts versus Mahomes. And I won't be watching. Not even a second. I don't recognize this Super Bowl. I think this is a racist Super Bowl. I think it's very anti-white. I think it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. So I will not be watching, and I wish bad luck to both quarterbacks, and we'll see what happens.
Both quarterbacks. All right, there you go, JL Cauvin. Go watch and follow and support. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is right now. Let's get it started. A little bit of sports talk with JL Cauvin. I don't do sports talk here or anywhere, but it is the Super Bowl, and it is the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Kansas City Chiefs. And there's all kinds of undertones based on those cities, locations, and their fans that we could talk about, but let that be for somebody else to discuss. I just thought that your Trump video with two quarterbacks was hilarious. I've just shared it. And do you have any other thoughts about there being two black quarterbacks? What is the significance really? JL?
Well, I think it's significant.
Are they allowed to talk about that on sports shows and like ESPN? Do they talk like the race of the quarterback? Like there's two black quarterbacks, and
I think they go out of their way not to discuss it. But in the case of like a historical thing, I think it's something they'll probably discuss, because I think the league for so many decades was sort of, racist, for lack of a better term, presuming things of the sport, the country, like presuming that, that sort of intellectual aspect of quarterbacking was not, in the capacity of black players.
The infamous Rush Limbaugh comments on that, right? You get fired.
Oh, did he talk about Donovan McNabb?
Yeah, he just basically said that something about black can't lead, black quarterbacks aren't smart enough. That whole, but I mean, some people said it out loud. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So it's. I mean, there's other more subtle things I think still in the league, but generally, it's like now. I think unfortunately, it took the game maybe evolving to a more athletic position where you want a mobile quarterback, you want somebody who has more physical talents, which has maybe opened up more teams to going, well, I don't know if he's got it all there, but he certainly can run and throw. And I think it's become a thing where now now there's, I think, nothing sort of exceptional, obviously, about having a black quarterback. But when you give that history of the sport and the league, where guys were coming into the NFL and being like told they should play receiver, it's like, okay, well, I've been coached at great schools to be a quarterback, but now you're just telling me like, oh, you think I'd be better as a receiver because I'm also fast? Like,
right.
So me having more skills or a skill set is like a detriment. Now you just think, oh, we'll put you somewhere else. I think the fact that now you have two quarterbacks starting a Super Bowl, literally both, reaching the pinnacle at the same time, it represents, with the league's history, it's important.
Rush Limbaugh said, I think the media has been very desirous that a black quarterback do well. They're interested in black coaches and black quarterbacks doing well. I think there's a little hope invested in McNabb, and he got a lot of credit for the performance of his team that he really didn't deserve.
Right. Once again, that's the whole, we have racial equity when an A student from Harvard Law who happens to be black becomes president, but when a legacy C student who happens to be black becomes president, then you'll have racial parity in this country. And I think it's the same thing. How many white quarterbacks manage games, put up mediocre stats? And Donovan McNabb was certainly a hell of a lot better than mediocre. But I think, like, football, it's just so funny when people play that with football, the sort of like, what about, and granted, there's plenty of talented white players and white coaches, but it is almost, it's like a South Africa, 1980s regime in terms of proportion of white leadership and black population in the sport. And, at some point you just go, do you not think it translates to being great at football and then coaching football? Like, do you not think that there's a possibility that might also succeed?
All well said, of course. We go from football to, well, I just, mentioning, obviously you're the greatest Trump impersonator in the country and still doing him. And I was just reading my friend Michael Cohen's latest piece about how
I subscribed to his Substack, thanks to you.
He's great. And I don't know if you saw then his latest piece, but it's about Trump's not going anywhere, which I haven't read it yet, but I have disagreed with that for a long time. But I wonder what your thoughts are. You live inside Donald Trump's world. He's not going away. I'm done with Donald Trump, but sadly it seems Republican voters don't feel the same. And I'll talk with Cohen about that piece. Where do you think that? What are your thoughts about where he is right now? He made the speeches, the dual speeches this week in New Hampshire and South Carolina. Is that where he was?
That's right. Yeah.
So he's out there. He's on the campaign trail. He's under investigation by about 800 different places, organizations, civil and criminal. Could be indicted any day now in Georgia or by what's his name?
America's Bolsonaro, I like to call him.
How do you? What are the parallels?
No, I'm kidding. They call Bolsonaro Brazilian Trump.
Right.
I was just trying to diminish Trump. No, because they're both dictators with, stench of corruption surrounding them.
So do you think, what are your thoughts as we speak here at the end of January about where...
Here's what I'll say. Obviously, we are on different sides of sort of the religious discussion, but Donald Trump is a religion to millions of Americans. He is not, I've called him a stripper pole for broken white men. He is something that a certain percentage of this country clings to, not as a politician, but as a life coach, a religious leader. And I think you may see, like with religion, you may see a diminishment in support from him. There's something psychological and spiritually broken in millions of people. And he is some sort of opioid / stripper pole / Mountain Dew Code Red that soothes these people and makes them feel like they are protected in a world that feels baffling or dangerous or scary to them. He's their blanket of racism and strength and loudness that they feel puts them at ease. And I think you're going to need, the Republican Party is going to have to, not that I give a shit, but they're going to have to decide quickly, who's our guy? And the problem is politics is full of people who go, it's me. And so you're going to have 8 people going, oh, no, I'm the one to take out Trump. And then they will divide the vote. And that Trump faith-based 26% could be enough unless they just decide, okay, it's going to be between, I don't know, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, and Donald Trump. And then you have a chance to get him out of the to beat him in the primary. But if everybody's ego gets in there and And it probably will, because these were people who didn't do the right thing the first time or the ninth time with Donald Trump. So they're not going to do the right thing now. They're just going to assume that they're the one with the talent and the message and the whatever to be, to finally take him out. And, there is a core Trump support that is just locked in. Like, it's sad and it's scary, but they are.
You think it's unbreakable? You don't think any of what he has done from January 6th to his NFT, to his grifting, asking people for money, to his, any of the things that he said about got to get rid of the Constitution? There's nothing at all. He could have sex with your wife and your family and kill him, and they just stand by him a certain core no matter what. Also, you could just argue like he's old news. You have seen a lot of people in media and other places start to turn away from him.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm talking about people who are with him now. Like I'm sure his support in the Republican Party, I don't know what it is, but I would have to imagine it's above 25% in any poll.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that tells you that there literally is nothing he can do. That's literally what that is telling you, is that there's nothing he can do to break their support.
Right.
And I think I think we discussed this last time I was on, Ron DeSantis on paper is playing the game correctly. He has good credentials. He is a popular governor in Florida if you just go by election results. And he's playing the culture war. Like, he's playing the primary game right now. Like, he looks like an idiot to a general electorate, but like, he's playing I'm banning AP African American history. Like, who do you think that's for? That's not a general election thing. That's I'm going to have to be bigger. I made this comparison, if I may, on my podcast As Trump, Making Podcasts Great Again. But I likened what DeSantis did in banning AP African American history to the Britney Spears Christina Aguilera rivalry. Christina Aguilera did the video "I'm a Slave for You," which was very sweaty and seductive. She was like, bare stomach, snake around her shoulders. And Christina Aguilera was put in the position of having to make the video dirty. Good song, absurd video. She's in assless chaps. She's grinding guys in like a boxing ring. And that's what Britney Spears did. It was like, I'm going to push you. I'm going to push the limits of taste. So the only way you can beat me is to go tasteless. And with DeSantis pulling an "I'm a slave for you," which, by the way, can't be taught in Florida, slavery. Ron DeSantis is I'm going to the outer limits of MAGA culture war absurdism. AP African American history? I don't think so. Woke comes to Florida to die, as do other legitimate sources of education. And now what does Trump do? If like in other words, at some point DeSantis is going to, I think, bait Trump into just saying the N-word with like a hard R on stage to prove his racism bona fides. And it's like, oh, you went too far, Trump. You went too far. DeSantis got you. So I think DeSantis is he's biding his time. I think he's not a charismatic person. And that's going to be his flaw, is that Trump will beat his ass in a debate. That I am certain of. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that would be probably, I think that's easy to say. I mean, Charlie Crist beat up Ron DeSantis pretty good in a debate. It didn't matter, but
right. But Trump, it will matter. He's going to loom over. He's going to be bigger than him. He can call him disloyal. I don't know why he went with dissanctimonious. That's like when you see Willie May. It's like watching the racist equivalent of Willie Mays stumbling in center field late in his career. Seeing Trump lose his nickname skills. Ron Disloyal. Just Ron Disloyal. There it is. You've branded him in a way that many people will say, that actually is.
Well, he said he was disloyal. He said. But
I mean, as a nickname.
Right.
I mean, just call him Ron Disloyal. I think he can mock him for copying his hand gestures. Like, what will happen in a debate is DeSantis will be going, no, actually, I respect you, President Trump, but what we're doing right now in Florida, which you wouldn't know about because you're not in a position of leadership, Trump will interrupt him and go, do you see him? Do you see him doing the hands? Yeah, I told him that. It's like watching Mini-Me. Why go for a clone, a tiny little clone, when you can have the original. It's called the original. And that will work. Like, what's DeSantis going to do? Argue policy? Or is he going to go, I'm actually Trump 2.0, and you're like the beta version? And people go, boo, shut up. And you're still branding yourself Trump. You're still saying, like, I'm a better Trump, but Trump is still the guide, is still the marker.
What about the DeSantis anti-woke act stuff and the banning of AP African American history? To me, that's such an important story that we can't talk about enough, and that we have to really be vigilant and looking out for. In my school board, we're seeing people try to change things, try to cross out certain words, and they have subtle strategies that they do, and then there's some more overt strategies in places like Florida. So it's kind of everywhere, and it's seeping in, and it's really insidious and disconcerting. How concerned are you about that type of overt banning of, in this case, advanced placement African American history, which helps high school seniors get into college? So it's going to be pretty specific, that kind of course.
Right. And DeSantis tried to play he cynically tried to play what I think is a legitimate argument. I think it's important that it just be part of American history. I think it's central to the story of America. I agree, but like not the way DeSantis is using it as like, that's why we shouldn't have this course, because it should be into, but
it's not, it's not that core. But hold on. It's not like they make it always seem like something's being taught that isn't being taught, or something's not being taught that is, when in fact you've got your American history and you've got your different eras of American history. This is an AP class. It's specifically dedicated to, in this case, African American history. It is completely common in every college in the country.
Right. No, it's ridiculous, but Florida is anti-college.
That's a lot of college.
I do think, though, he is playing everything he is doing is I don't think he believes half the shit he does, but he's a hardcore political animal, and he sees this is his moment, and he's going to go hard to the right, and then he will pivot to an economic message and a freedom message for a general election. And people will let him.
Yes, most likely that's a great prediction. Let me just ask you how closely you're following all the legal cases about Trump. You got the January 6th investigation, the classified documents investigation, Georgia election interference criminal investigation, the criminal investigation into Trump's alleged financial crimes in New York, criminal investigation surrounding his special purpose acquisition company, criminal investigation into Trump's pre-election hush money payments to a porn star. That excludes, JL, everybody,
stealing Carrie Lake's heart.
What I didn't realize that was an investigation. I didn't even.
It's a crime of passion, Pete.
I didn't include the civil disputes, is all I was saying. Like, I didn't even get to the civil litigation and I got to
be honest with you. My newspaper reading, it's going to be weird, but I'm a hard copy, New York Star Ledger, New York Times delivered to my door every morning. I can't read as well with the shoulder. It's like a paper is very unwieldy. So I've been like keeping up a little bit with big stories, but I'm not the last month I've been kind of less thorough than I usually am, because I'm just sitting on a couch, like crying to myself. Over
Well, that's a great reason to not have expert legal analysis on any of these legal cases. And I'm certainly sorry and depressed to hear that. It's a real lame excuse. Some kind of
I watch the news now. I've never felt more American than in the last 6 weeks. I haven't done a minute of exercise. I've barely read. I shower once every 3 weeks, and I watch TV 11 hours a day. I have never felt more like a patriot in my life.
What are you eating?
Mostly healthy things, at least.
That's good.
It's the only way. Like, if I can't do any kind of exercise, like I gotta, you just, ugh.
Do you not have a correlation between kind of mood and depression and the deal that you've had with all kinds of stuff going on, but mainly obviously your shoulder here, that doesn't equate to you feeding your feelings kind of a thing?
I just I have to like quickly make the good decision, you know what I mean? Because as soon as I go like, well, I could have 2 donuts and that would make me feel good for about 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then I'll just sit there going, why did you do that?
Right.
It's terrible. But I had, a nice grilled salmon and broccoli for dinner. That's why I'm feeling a little better.
Well, that sounds healthy. But you're able to, just to be clear, you're able to identify how you'll feel crappy after eating poorly. And then that is the thing that helps you say, I'm not doing it. I'm not going.
Sometimes it does, but sometimes you want the quick fix. But it helps that, like, basically my girlfriend is like a nicer looking Kathy Bates right now from Misery. Like, I'm at her whim of like her going shopping and her bringing things in. So
bless her heart, for goodness sake. No, I mean, because I think that kind of the ability to forecast an emotional conclusion and say, I'm not going to do. That's how I've been able to control a lot of my kind of negative behavior and escalating arguments type thing. Like, if I do that, I might feel good in the moment, powerful and righteous in the moment, but I am going to ruin everything for hours, days, or weeks between me and Val or the girls or something, or anybody else, if I have that kind of a reaction. What for? What's it all for? Okay, so let me then ask you about the big, you had a really great analysis about the Tyree Nichols situation on your podcast, Righteous Prick. Righteous PK, get your podcast wherever you get your podcast. Is that what you're supposed to say? And you do have credibility, a lot of credibility, those both personally and professionally. And you have experience with criminal justice system and thoughts about criminal justice reform that are nuanced. And so, I wanted to talk with you about this, obviously to your mixed race, and you have a lot of thoughts always about race. And I really was very interested in your commentary, and people should go listen to that episode, but give me some of that sweet analysis right here about this, because I thought it was interesting just to start that you are such a big reader. And you read a book about George Floyd, and I also
read a lot.
And you read a lot. You're a giant person while reading. And in terms of quantity, you take in a lot. You're always reading really good, relevant nonfiction as well as others. But you kind of talked about the comparison between Derek Chauvin. You talked about white cops versus black cops. There's a lot there that you have to say. I'm not sure quite where to start. It was really fascinating to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, I do hope people, I know that not everybody's going to listen to every episode of my podcast. They range from like despondent about comedy to like manically hilarious and everything in between. But this episode was mostly, the most recent episode is really like about 75% just my thoughts on Tyree Nichols, because it is sort of an odd intersection of a lot of things that I have grown up with and done in my life. But first of all, I think this has already been said by many people, but this idea that people have to realize it's not necessarily the color of the cop. It's the victim. It's the color of the victim. It's the victim and the dehumanization, particularly of black men, where the blue, the uniform, kind of, and I know it's very well articulated on the podcast today, but one of the things I noticed, just using my own personal experience, is two examples, myself and my uncle, who passed away a few years ago, but he was a public school teacher, registered Democrat, liberal, public school special ed teacher in like some rough schools in the Bronx for 25 years. And he was a guy who took great pride when his students, not like white savior pride, but like just took pride when he had good kids or they did all right. But in a situation like that, a parent-teacher conference night at a low-income special education school, you're going to have like 3 parents show up out of 20 kids to a parent-teacher conference. And eventually that started to wear on him. And you could hear sort of these people, what the hell is wrong? Like, because he cares. And it's easier, especially when you're emotionally invested, to sort of project or to broaden and be like, look at these. And now you're not taking into account, maybe they can't get babysitters. Maybe they're working second jobs. Sure, maybe some of the parents are neglectful. That's obviously part of the equation too. But when you're emotionally invested, you want an easy solution, and I think you have to be very vigilant to guard against your own prejudices. Now, and I'm not saying he went like off the handle, but I'm just saying these are things I remember because he really did care about his students, but he could also, that caring could easily become like a flip of like, what the fuck are these people doing? Not coming. It's like nobody cares in this neighborhood, right. And especially when you're an outsider coming to another neighborhood, you're not a member of that community. You're part of the educational community, but you don't live and breathe that community, which is why, among other things I mentioned on my podcast as one thing, cops need to be part of the community. You have like, this is something that doesn't get talked enough about. It's not even about race. It's not even though that does matter to a certain extent, but it's, you are entering this community. You are going to this community like it's an office building. And you can go with the same thoughts that other people have when they go to their job, like, fuck this job. I fucking hate this guy. This sucks. But if you allow cops, when I was a prosecutor, I had to live in New York City, which was ridiculous because they paid us nothing. But you had to, and I don't even know why. You didn't have to live in Manhattan or the borough, but you had to live in New York City. Whereas cops can go to their cop towns outside the city that are, homogeneous.
Yeah, where I live. Yeah.
Right. So you go with your job, which is not like a typical job, with an outsider mentality. And it's one of the many factors that I think creates an us versus them instead of a we. Sort of like, I am part of the community that I'm policing. I want to be a police officer so I can help my community, not so I can go fuck up somebody else's community because I'm a badass. But there are so, like, a lot of the things I talked about my time as a prosecutor. I'm half black, half white. In the Bronx, the cases I was seeing were largely Latino defendants. Largely, not exclusively, but like, if I had to guess, I'd say over 80% of the cases I ever worked on, big or small, were Latino defendants. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was dating a Puerto Rican woman at the time, and that does factor in because I remember there were some familial issues she was having that were, I hate to say it, some were sort of stereotypical womanizing, machismo, abuse kind of things. And so I internalized some of that, wanting to be protective of her and care about her. And then, after a few years of my desk being Sanchez, Lopez, Diaz, Vasquez, Gutierrez.
We get it.
No, but I'm saying you start to just creeping thoughts of like, these people, what the fuck?
Right.
And you're not saying it like, I think these people are shit, but you're like, what's wrong with this community? You start to hit. And then because I am somebody of a different background, I went to a liberal arts college. I have had some of these woke, namby-pamby ideas, and I put air quotes in that because that's not, but drilled into me to where I had some self-reflection skills and some self-awareness to then go, what the fuck am I doing? I work in a criminal environment. Like, my job, I'm not even a cop. A cop can interact with the community good and bad if they so choose.
You only get the people who
get the crimes. Right. I don't even go out into the world. So you have to pause and go, well, I live in a borough with a lot of Latino people. And my job is to process and prosecute crimes. It's not to talk with people in the community. I'm literally here at the end of a process where the end of the process is a crime. But so it helps. And I'm not dealing with the same pressures, obviously, as a police officer in terms of on the street, potential danger, potential hostility. But I did find myself towards the end of my time at the DA's office thankful that I was leaving because I didn't like that. I didn't like having to check. I mean, of course I checked myself, but I didn't even like the process of finding myself sitting there going, what the fuck? Like the phrase in your mind, these people.
Right. But but I think the big point of you, whether it be a prosecutor or a police officer or anybody in any part of the law enforcement
paradigm, if you come in with the education and the lived experience that you had, you have the tools and assets, the resources to kind of be able to check your bias and understand how your cognition of it all works, and then give yourself that perspective that you had, that my mom as a public school teacher had. But most certainly police officers don't come in with that. Arguably, they come in already and not understanding or thinking wrongly about these cultural, sociological, criminological ideas.
But I think it's actually worse than that, because I remember when I was at the DA's office, coincidentally, NYPD during that time dropped their requirement of a 4-year degree to a 2-year degree. And this isn't to shit on people with 2-year degrees, but there was a reason for the 4-year degree. It's a maturity. It's a maturity issue. It's an education issue. And I remember a cop saying to me, like, "Oh, great, the shit," like, kind of suggesting, like, "Oh, get ready for a shitstorm eventually."
Well, yeah. I mean, there's nothing. You're lowering standards. Same thing happened with the military. I mean, eventually, you're hiring criminals to be in the army and the police.
Right. But I think. What I think the problem is, and I said this in I think a Twitter post also, but I said this has to be a cradle to the grave, not to use a death analogy, but a cradle to the grave approach, which means you have to change who you're recruiting and how you recruit them. Yeah. You then have because you're going to get a lot of people who come in and don't just say, "Oh, I don't have these biases." They will roll their eyes at the idea of implicit bias, or training, or cultural sensitivity, or community relations. Some people, because they think, I'm a cop, I'm here because I'm an alpha, not because I need sensitivity training, or here's what you need to do, obey. Yeah. And I need to go home. And they always and I need to go home to my family, because that's like a catch-all. Oh, if I make it life and death, then that's to shut you down. That's to shut you the fuck up. That I'm telling you, at the end of the day, my guys need to go home to their families. And it's like, oh, I guess I have no argument then, because you've made it life and death. And that's kind of the rhetorical argument these unions and things make. But I think you have to get people who are amenable to that kind of training, so that you put good people in position to be cops, but then make sure that the training is thorough and consistent and developed enough constantly, so that, hey, maybe a guy shouldn't be walking the beat for 8 years, or in narcotics for 3 years, like seeing the worst of everything and not getting any kind of PTSD or therapy, or things that will make sure he realizes, like, you can't view the community as a sea of landmines that you have to duck.
Well, they view the community as their enemy, and they're trained in many precincts and places. They're trained that they're the wolf, and the community is the sheep.
If you're not, I think the issue is even if you're not trained to view that way, it's somewhat natural. I use myself as an example just to say, I could see I'm a left-wing, multiracial, lib cuck, whatever, and I could feel that happening to me a little bit on a small level. And you have to
defend against that, and you have to defend against that, and it has to be written into the procedures, the reforms. Right. But what do you say to, and you take this on in your podcast too? You start with this. Unfortunately, you didn't do it here, because some people might, you start at the argument of, you think the idea that a lot of folks on the left, progressive policy experts, start with, even, which is starting from the ground up. Just abolish the way that current policing exists, and redo the whole entire system. And the reason you say, and I think I mostly agree with this, unfortunately, is because it's not realistic. It's not real, and we have to have some extent. We have to be pragmatic. I'm over here where I think that it's so hard to get even the most minor of reforms done, whether you're talking about training, you're talking about credentials and education. And I'm simply saying it was really hard to make police have to wear cameras. Some of the smaller reforms that may or may not make a difference, hard to know, have been very hard to change, because everybody, I'm sorry, but everybody that knows any police knows that they hate that we can watch them. They hate oversight. They want full discretion in every interaction and to control it from beginning to end. And what we're saying is, no, we've got to change things. But
if the military has civilian leadership, why the fuck can't cops? Like, you know what I mean? Obviously, I just mean, like, obviously the president and the secretary of defense are the civilians. But in a broad sense, why do you think that is? Why do you think this country has civilian leadership of the military? Because at some point, they have to be literally responsible to the people at some level. And cops are important. They do an important job, but they aren't their own autonomous fucking body to roam the streets. And I think but when progressives say, like, abolish, defund, and without even getting into slogans, I think you have to be like, but are you actually trying to achieve a solution with that? Because, you know, it's not going to happen. NYPD is not going to cease to exist tomorrow. Memphis is still going to have police. Memphis, unfortunately, some of this shit was a response to increase in violent crime. It was maybe the hammer is very tempting to people of all races and economic backgrounds when a scalpel is maybe what's needed. Because you see, you know what I mean? Like, you see, it's politically expedient. It makes people feel like action is being taken. If I come to you and say, we have instituted a massive retraining and recruitment program to change our makeup of our police and how they police from the ground up, people will kind of be like, on the left will be like, not enough. And on the right, they'll be going, so what? We're now woke police. Like, that's where we are in this country, where it's like the solution, both practically and maybe effectively, is probably going to make the polar opposites very unhappy. I don't know.
What about some of the reforms that have been suggested, like, qualified immunity or bail reform, or obviously replacing police officers with social workers in all kinds of different responses where you're dealing with somebody who's mentally ill and likely nonviolent. And often the police escalate that violence. They misunderstand, an autistic person. And I mean, there's all kinds of things that have been suggested as reforms. I mean, you're obviously supportive of all those ideas mostly, or?
Yes. No, because I think I'm supportive of all those ideas. And then politically I go, so let's get what we can.
Right.
Let's get what we can. We're not going to get an 8 for 8. But can we get 3 of 8? Because I consider that progress. And I don't know. I think, Tim Scott obviously torpedoed the George Floyd and Policing Act.
Crazy.
And what I think I said it on the podcast also, this is the cynical part of me again. George Floyd really unified most people for a short amount of time. And it was like 6 months later until, okay, well, now we're actually going to talk about the George Floyd protest riots, wokeism, all this other stuff. And it's like, I think that's going to happen with this again. I think I said on the podcast, I said, just mark your calendars for 6 months from now, where any suggestion other than, hey, these were bad cops, this is disgraceful, we mourn the loss of Tyree Nichols, anything beyond that will be a source of mockery or political division in 6 months. So, disbanding anti-crime units. Oh my goodness. Even though it was an anti-crime unit that killed Eric Garner. It was, it's sad because, like democracy, law enforcement is a sort of political wedge issue now, where you can kind of just not do the right thing. The obvious right thing is to say we need reforms, and let's get together and figure out what reforms we can really agree on. But we all agree things need to change. But I think what you'll get is people who will, as quickly as they can get political capital from it, go, he wants to get rid of police. And that's so irresponsible and cynical. But and I'm sorry, that's what the right will do. And I get annoyed at left-wing people going, they'll complain about Biden not doing enough, as if there's not a political process prescribed by the Constitution to make a law. But the right will always go for the gutter because they know they can win over bigots and simple people and people who just want to go about their lives and have simple solutions.
And the reason why that is just so, I guess, anti-democratic and unrepresentative is if you look at the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which aimed, who knows what effect it would have, but the aim was to combat things like police misconduct, excessive force, racial bias in policing, and so much more. I'm just giving the roughest overview of it. It passed the House. It dies in the Senate. Biden comes out there today and says, we got to pass this, knowing that it's not going to even pass the Republican-controlled House. And then if you look at comprehensive immigration reform back in 2013, where it passed the Senate, even with a bunch of Republicans, but it was never even taken up for a vote in the House. Right. What you see is that Democrats, who represent so many more Americans, especially in places most affected by these issues, versus Republicans, who represent so many fewer Americans. And I just get irked with so much when people talk about the parties are the same, because Democrats over and over and over pass legislation out of the House or the Senate, and then it doesn't either get a vote in the Republican controlled body. And that is infuriating to me that reporters and pundits and the American public doesn't understand that, because we could actually make progress for the majority of people who are represented in Congress by the people who want to pass this piece of legislation, if not specifically mainly for the Senate.
Yeah, no, the truth about our politics right now, you're always going to find an audience, of people if you say we need more independence or we need a third party or we need to abandon the two-party system. But in this moment in our history, like in the last decade, I'd say the answer to solving America's problems is fewer Republicans in office. And I'm not talking about, your Charlie Baker, Larry Hogan's, like your outliers who are getting things done and popular in their states. In national government, they are the party of not what the Democrats want. That's not an agenda. Yeah. And I said this before, and what I found so dangerous about Mitch McConnell and the Republicans in the Senate, thankfully they don't have the Senate, is the House, as infuriating as they are, is operating much closer to how the sacred, blessed founding fathers envisioned it. It was supposed to be more catering to the whims of the people and more chaotic, not the bullshit they claimed during Kevin McCarthy's 15 votes to become speaker, not that garbage, but it is, you're going to have a Marjorie Taylor Greene. You're going to have a Matt Gaetz in a big country where every community is getting, gerrymandering aside, of course, but you're going to have some outliers, some freaks. And the Senate is supposed to be like, when you brought up the Policing Act, the George Floyd Act, the Senate under McConnell especially now seems to just operate with a House mentality, because it's not about I'm here for 6 years. It's about we can take leadership in 2 years. So they're actually, Mitch McConnell runs the House with runs the Senate with senatorial power and terms of 6 years, but with a mindset of every 2 years we can fuck shit up, as get me back in leadership. That's what I'm concerned about. I want to run the Senate. I'm not looking and saying, you know what, I'm here for 5 more years. The George Floyd Act is the right thing to do. Politics aside, that's why I've been given by the founding fathers, the blessed, sacred founding fathers. That's why I've been given a longer term than the president or the House, because I'm supposed to be saying, if you really are still fucking pissed in 2027 at me, vote me out. But I'm going to do the smart thing for the longer term welfare of the country. But when you have politicians, especially like Mitch McConnell, who treat the Senate like a 2-year power struggle cycle instead of a 6-year term to do good things, then you're really fucked. Because they're fucking up one of the branches of government's the House can be stupid, and it's closer to the the idea of the House.
Right.
Crazy people every 2 years is closer to what they envisioned than a senator playing a 2-year game every 2 years to control the Senate and doing nothing with his long term of office.
Before I let you go, let's get a recommendation. You, even when you aren't handicapped, injured, you watch a lot of television and film, and it would seem that right now you're very much into and aroused by a show called This Is Us. Do I have that right? Is that your big...
No. This Is Us is about...
I mean, the Last of Us. The Last of Us. Forgive me. The Last of Us.
I did like This Is Us, but The Last of Us is
everybody knows about This
level.
Is Us. We're talking about The Last of Us, which is... It stars the actor who's in everything.
Pedro Pascal.
That guy's agent. Who is this? Why does he get every role? I hate him. He's a
charismatic Latino young Burt Reynolds, sir. That is marketable.
He is a greedy son of a bitch. The fact that he took the role of the Mandalorian role, you don't have to have seen that, but he wears a helmet the whole time, meaning any actor could have played that role, and yet
it's basically a voiceover role.
Right, exactly. I hate when famous actors take voiceover roles from regular, hardworking, run-of-the-mill actors. Anyway, this show, The Last of Us.
That was Pete's way of saying he doesn't like Latin actors taking jobs from strong white actors.
No, because I love this other Latin actor who's also in a lot of things.
Diego Luna?
Yes, I love him. He doesn't seem like a selfish prick as much as the other guy.
Well, if you'd seen Game of Thrones, you'd understand why Pedro Pascal is
never saw an episode of it. My daughter, 18-year-old Ava's like, you guys got to watch Game of Thrones. My wife and I were like, we're never going to watch that show.
From the mouths of babes. Yeah, Game of Thrones was awesome. He was awesome in Game of Thrones. He was like one season. He had like one season. He was phenomenal. He's in Narcos, which is one of my favorite shows on Netflix. He's a great actor.
Yes, it's established. But he's now in The Last of Us on HBO. You want to recommend that?
I do. I played the video game, I guess, like 9 years ago.
It's a show based on a video game. That's right, right?
The game sold like 20 million copies. It was the game of the year that year. And I remember I used to blog at the end of each year, like my 10 favorite things of the year, whether it be people, books, movies, television shows, etc. And the year I played The Last of Us, I put it as my number one thing of that year because it is the best video game, in my opinion, I've ever played. And the series, which is the two people creating the show, are the creator of the game and, God, I'm forgetting his name, Mazin. I forget his first name, but he was the guy who did Chernobyl for HBO, which is an A+ miniseries for anybody who hasn't seen it. Chernobyl, HBO Max. I mean, incredible.
I still haven't seen that either. A lot of people have told me to see that. Yeah.
5 episodes, Pete. 5 episodes. You'll be blown away by Chernobyl. But when I heard,
listen, I need you to calm down. Everybody needs you to calm down. Go ahead. It's
rare you get me. You see, you know me. Usually I'm like, well, anyway, I think I'll just swallow this bottle of pills after this mediocre comedy gig. You should be encouraging my streaming therapy. But The Last of Us is 3 episodes in. I think it's great. It's
a series is set in a post-apocalyptic United States ravaged by cannibalistic creatures infected by a mutated fungus. Yeah.
And get ready for episode 3. The greatest work of Nick Offerman's life. And I'm not saying that in any joking way. Episode 3 was such a brilliant kind of pivot from the game to expand like a side character's story. But it's great action. It's great storytelling. It's got heart. It's got like, it's an incredible, I can already just tell 3 episodes in, it's this incredible weighty show. And it's everything I hoped when you take a great video game and a guy who made a great dark series like Chernobyl, and it seems like they just have meshed that vision, and it's shaping up to be a masterpiece.
Okay, well, you heard it from JL. Now, what you're reading? Are you able to read books?
I'm a few days away from finishing a biography that came out like last fall on George Michael.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of George Michael's music, and this is a really, really kind of thorough, enjoyable read. I remember the book got good reviews, so I was like, hey, I was shocked when he died so young, and I'm a big fan of his music, so I got it, and it's it's when somebody really gets into the depths of an artist, their highs and lows, I find that stuff very compelling.
Right.
And George Michael was, he was as high and as low as any sort of, artist has been.
There you go, folks. You've got a book. You've got a couple of shows. Any other recommendations?
Come see me in Chicago next week. And, check out my 2 podcasts. They are both very strong of late. So it'll make me happy to see a little uptick. And you just go to jlcomedy.com, podcast tab, blah, blah, blah. And I also have a Patreon if anybody's interested, which I update several times a month with various forms of bonus content.
Thank you for giving me so much content. Always great talking to you, my friend. I really appreciate it. Safe travels. I hope your shoulder heals. Thank you. I'll be following you as a fan, as always.
By the way, I can spoil it now that the credits have finally been added to my special after 480 days. Stand Up with Pete Dominic gets one of the most prominent thank yous at the end. But I said Stand Up with Pete Dominic because I figured in there is a thank you to Pete Dominic, but I figured I'd give the show. No,
that's much better. Yeah, the community is a big supporter of yours.
So those 98 people who purchase it or stream it, they're going to go, oh. And the 4 people who stay for the credits, they're going to go, Stand Up with Pete Dominic. I should check that out. Oh, wait, I'm not a podcast person. Never mind.
We're all very flattered. My favorite thing will be after your Chicago performances next week, the day or 2 days after, when some of your fans say, when will you be coming to Chicago?
Oh, isn't that the best? Isn't that? I get every day, I go, are you coming to Northern California soon? I literally wrote to a guy on YouTube today. I said, I was there last year. Not a lot of people bought tickets, so I'm not sure they're going to have me back.
I had that happen when I was at someone's house. When will you be coming to Northern California? I was like, I was in your living room, dude. You didn't even see me there? All right, bud. Thank you very, very much.
Good talking with you. Thank you for having me.
All right, there he goes. JL Cauvin, jlcauvin.com. Check out all his upcoming dates. You can see him in Chicago and D.C. and Philadelphia, New Jersey, and more. jlcauvin.com. Listen to both his podcasts. Support him on Patreon. And that is all I've got for you on today's show. Look forward to being here with you tomorrow and every weekday. Go review and rate the podcast at Apple and Spotify. Sign up for a paid subscription at patreon.com/Pete Dominic. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. I love you guys. Thanks for all of your support, friendship, and I hope that you're doing well. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye. You can't see the forest for the burning trees. You got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long. You got the creaky knees. You got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up. Stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination.
time they were in with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up. We got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up. You got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well, and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up. Stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up. People got the power. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Stand up.